I'm going to go ahead and get started. If you hear little dings off my computer, I apologize in advance. First off, I do want to introduce Mindy Dilly. She just turned on her camera so you guys can see her. She's our moderator today, so she'll be kind of watching the chat, making sure that if anyone shows up in the waiting room that they get let in if they're a little late. Just kind of making sure everything runs smoothly today. So today we're going to talk about time hacks for the involved student. I'm sure all of you are like itching to figure out what crazy master plan I have for you guys to be managing your time better, but I promise I'm not a master, and I just made it through undergrad as a super involved student. So I'm giving you my hacks, and that's really it. So let me figure out how to use my PowerPoint. There we go. So first things first, you guys did this in your last session too, but we'll be taking attendance at the end of the session. So Mindy will end up sending a link in the chat that you guys fill out, and you guys can let us know what org you're here for representing, because we all know that your organization was required to be here and you're the person that chose to be with us today. We are so excited to see you all here. We're so glad that you're wanting to better your organizations and do what you have to get the ball rolling even in these crazy times. So to start off, I'm Michaela Wells. I'm the Graduate Assistant of Assessment and Service Initiatives in the Office of Student Involvement. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And as you can see, my little stars there, I'm a formerly over-involved student. I'm currently pursuing my degree, Master's of Education in Higher Education, and then I'm also getting a certificate in Student Affairs, Administration, and Leadership. So essentially, I want to work in an Office of Student Involvement for the rest of my life, particularly with fraternity and sorority life, but anything with involvement is near and dear to my heart. So now I know it is sometimes hard to imagine us professionals in our day-to-day life as everyday people. So I thought I would show you some photos of my over-involved college experience to help break down that little barrier you may think that exists between us. So a little over a year ago, I was a scared, confused, and overwhelmed college student, just like many of you are maybe today. But college can be just as exciting and fun as it is stressful. On the top left, you'll see sorority girl Michaela, really ready and excited to welcome new members to campus. On the right, you'll see homecoming court Michaela, super excited to be hanging out with her favorite people to be involved with. And then on the bottom right, you will see my little college girl gang. We lovingly titled ourselves Corner Squad because we all lived in the same corner of a hallway in our sorority. Not very creative, but you know, it worked. And then on the left, you will see most dear and, my goodness, words are so hard today. Most near and dear to my heart, my best friend Ellie and one of her two children. My best friend of all time, really, and she actually was a teen mom. And she has gone leaps and bounds to be attending college currently and getting her life started as far as her career while still managing her two children. And while her story is not my own, it impacts the way that I encourage students like you to proceed in your leadership roles. Not everyone has time to be involved in multiple organizations or take on leadership roles in the organizations that they're a part of. And so some of you here today are doing everything that you can to have a stereotypical college experience, even though you have all of these things going on in your life. You might be a mom, a dad, or a caregiver, just a caregiver to children. You might be taking care of your siblings or maybe a grandparent. And these things should not go unnoticed because you're doing that and you're giving it all that you possibly can. To those of you who don't have these things on your plates, I would encourage you to try and be cognizant that you may be working with someone who does. If someone doesn't make a deadline, instead of automatically assuming that they didn't care about the project or don't respect your role, give them the benefit of the doubt. Reach out first. It's really easy to just say, hey, is everything going okay? I didn't see that document you were supposed to have to me. I just wanted to check on you above all else. That can go really far because people want to know that they're cared about. People like to know that people are thinking of them even when they think that they may not be worthy of that care and time and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. And that's another reason I wanted to show you all these fun pictures, not because I wanted to just let you all stare at me for a whole slide, but because I wanted you guys to know, like, this is me, I'm human, just like the rest of you. And while I may not have all that going on in my life, I have some things going on in my life, and I have been able to still get through college, graduate, and go on to get my master's degree. All right. So, first thing that we have to do in managing our time is to begin talking about what we do and how we are currently spending our time. So, I want you guys to take about 3 to 5 minutes to write down and brainstorm the things that you currently spend your time on. And think about how much you spend out of your week doing those things. So if you watch 1 hour of a show per day, that's 7 hours of your day that you watch Netflix. That's great. If you only watch 7 hours of Netflix, I'm really proud of you. But so just kind of trying thinking through, like, it's really easy to be like, oh, I spend 3 hours in class a day. But 3 times, if you're in 3 hours of class 5 days a week, that's 15 hours of your day. So just take a couple minutes to try and figure out where you're spending your time and how long you're spending on those things that you spend your time on.
We had a few students just recently join us, so we're not just hanging out in silence. We're taking a few moments to really be honest about what are you spending your day on currently. So that's Netflix, class, work. That's what we're brainstorming. So I just didn't want you all to be like, what's happening here?
We're gonna keep brainstorming for about 30 more minutes or seconds, sorry. I know it could be kind of hard. When I first did this exercise, I could not think of it was really hard for me to think of things. So if you haven't quite thought of everything, that's okay. but just giving some time to kind of think through this.
Michaela, we have a question. Are we going to be sharing any of this, or is this just personal reflection?
Just personal reflection. Anything I ask you to spend time on today, we're not going to really share. Just kind of keep it to ourselves. Good question, though. Alrighty, so first I'm going to show you how I spend my time during these weird times of COVID and quarantine, just kind of to be transparent. So first and foremost, on the right-hand side in blue, the large blue slice, you will see sleep. I'm the type of person that needs 8 hours of sleep a night, or else I will be crabby. I will be drowsy all day. I'll be sitting at my desk like, dang, I can't get through this. And so sleep, especially during quarantine when I just really have to roll out of bed and maybe like brush my hair, brush my teeth, and come to my computer screen, I really just make sure that I'm going to get 8 hours because I don't have to be waking up early, putting on a full face of makeup and running out the door and doing my whole routine. And so another side effect of being home as well is that you'll see the red slice. That's my relationship. My partner and I live together, and so both of us being working from home for the most part, we're trapped inside together all the time. And so we have spent a significant more amount of time with each other than we used to. And I'm sure some of you are feeling that with your families and possibly significant others, that you have gotten to see a lot more of their shining face than you are used to. And so up next, you'll see yellow is social media. Be honest, y'all, who has not gotten a little bit more addicted to social media than we already were during COVID? I mean, like TikTok, come on. Like, I just keep scrolling. I can't stop. And like, it's so easy. We're just sitting at home. What do? We look at our phone, we get on social media. So it's a very large chunk of my life at the moment. Not super proud of it, but that's the reality of how it is. And then next is, let me look, the small blue slice. That's how much time I spend on homework. So as a grad student, depending on what your class load is, you might have a lot less homework, honestly, than you did in undergrad, which probably sounds crazy. Because I know when I was in undergrad, I thought my master's degree sounded terrifying, and I was so scared for how much I was going to have to do. But I spend right now I only have one class, so I spend maybe 3 hours doing homework a week. So not too bad at all. And then, you'll see on my next slide because on the next slide, I'm going to show you how I spent my time in undergrad. So you guys can maybe feel a little bit more seen with that because there's a lot more on there. You'll see that I spent a lot more time doing homework in undergrad. So don't feel like you're being dramatic if your time with friends or homework is a lot more than mine is. And then you'll see the purple on there. I put unaccounted for. I did forget to put that I eat and cook and run errands. So, just important things that happened in my day-to-day life that I forgot about. So that's probably what I'm doing for those hours, but I just put unaccounted for because I couldn't think of what it was. And so in undergrad, you'll notice specifically a stark difference in the amount of sleep I have compared to the rest of my time. I got maybe 5 hours of sleep a night in undergrad because I was doing homework and other crazy things and whatever. And so the next biggest slice of my time was homework and friends. Part of that is because I lived in a sorority house. So quite literally, if I was not out of my house, I was with friends because I was living with all of my friends. And so that made that a lot bigger than it probably would have been otherwise. And then the light green and the yellow account for the time I was in class and working. And so you can see those are a significant chunk of my day. And then the small blue chunk on the left is a time I spent specifically doing sorority things. And I didn't look at all the participants. I don't know how many of you are involved in fraternity and sorority life, and we're not focusing on fraternity and sorority life, I promise. But I spent on average about 7 to 9 hours a week probably doing sorority things when I was an undergrad. That involves chapter dinner and meetings, going to Panhellenic Council meetings, and then also there's events that we all have most weeks. And so just spent a lot of time doing that. And then on top of that, I was also involved in homecoming committee. And so that's where the other involvement and leadership came in. And so as you can see, a lot less of my circle is spent doing personal free time kind of things. It's more so doing work. On that same topic, you'll see social media is pretty big still in undergrad. Obviously, we all spend time on our social media, but also I was in charge of Instagram accounts for a few organizations on campus. And if any of you do that, you know that it takes a lot of work and effort. And sometimes you're just like, man, I hate social media because of all the stuff you've had to endure while doing that. But I'm sure as other people have told you in these other sessions, like right now, social media is a big deal, and it's really how we're getting the name out there about anything that we're doing as leaders. And so I encourage you, even when you feel burnt out on social media, to maybe appoint another person to help you with social media, or just something to make sure that it's getting done and you don't just like put it by the wayside because you're stressed out about it. Oh my goodness. All right. So now that I just talked to you all about how I spent my time, I hope that helped you guys think through a little bit more intensely about how you're spending your time, because I know when I do these kind of assessments of how I'm spending my time, it really helps me figure out what I can change in order to better fit other things into my life that I want to fit there. And so to help manage our time, first step is prioritizing our time, or don't. That doesn't really make sense, does it? So I'm sure all of you have heard prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. But what if that's not the best option for you? So to those of you who do know me, you probably know that I love a good list. Lists are my jam. To my list makers out there, we know good and well that making a list takes time. And so first, you got to find the perfect piece of paper. Where is my list going to go today? The perfect pen, it better write well, because if it messes up in the middle, then I have to change the pen color and it's just going to mess up the whole list, right? All right. And then after all of that, you have to sit down and actually think through all of these things you have going on and what you need to make a list about. And obviously, all of that takes time. And so the thing about that process is that for some people, it's very helpful for them to organize their thoughts in that way. But for some of you, I'm sure that you have been forced to make a to-do list in your life, even though you knew you were not going to use that list, nor were you going to follow it in that order. That's okay. I'm probably speaking to mostly oranges in the room. Now, if you've taken the True Colors personality test, you get what I was just talking about. If not, you're very confused why I just referred to a bunch of people as fruit. And so if you are an orange or you just don't like lists, don't make them. Essentially, you're wasting your time by making that list, because you're focusing all this energy on the list that by the time you get to your tasks, are you going to want to do the tasks? You already did that big task of making a list that you don't even like and you don't even want to use. So it's not necessary really to make lists. And I know the goals and the very organized people in here, including myself, are like, you don't have a list? That's okay. Some people don't work off lists. And so to many of you that despise organization, you don't need a list to be perfectly organized, I promise. One thing that really helps if you don't like lists, and to a lot of people that are organized and do make lists, this next slide is probably going to look kind of like a list because it's just the way your brain automatically organizes things. But to people that don't like lists, I promise it's not really a list. It's just kind of a schedule. And so the best way to manage your time throughout the week is to actually have some sort of plan for what your week is going to look like before it even starts. To the more organized people, a month might even be good for you, especially with big projects for school. It might help you to even look farther into the future than a week, to be like, okay, this is when I have this project and this when I have this project, to figure out what's going to work best for you. And so experts suggest using a 3-part model that outlines time for your career goals, your personal goals, and your relationships and friendships. And to kind of help you guys out, because you guys aren't quite into your careers yet, most of you at least, I broke career down into work, homework, and your RSO responsibilities, just to make it more applicable to you all. And so essentially, I just did a little mock of what my life may have looked like when I was an undergrad. So I put in my work schedule right off the bat. Your work schedule is already put into place. You can't really change that. So we might as well just make it the first thing we put in there. So you have your work schedule. And then next I add in my projects that are due. So you can't also change that unless you ask for an extension or whatever, which is a good option if you're overwhelmed, but obviously don't overuse that. So I have my 2 projects, my poli-sci essay and my Hibbsy research paper. For those of you that are confused, Hibbsy is just human behavior and social environment. Yep, that's what it is. And then for your RSO, so say you have a meeting on Mondays at 6, and then on Tuesday, you know that you need to put in an SABC request for your upcoming event. Okay, well, at your meeting at 6 p.m. when you leave, do you normally just kind of talk to the people around you and like hang out for a minute? Instead of doing that, you could work on the SABC request, because all the people that know the information about what the request is for are sitting right in front of you. So if you have questions, you won't have to call or text and wait for a response. You can just get the information, send it in right away. And then so on Friday, you'll see we have check back in with speaker. Just as a good rule of thumb, if you have speakers or professionals coming into your meetings ever or talking, presenting, whatever to you guys, it's good to check in with them. Not because they're going to forget about you, but because we all have busy lives. And even though they might seem perfect to you and you idolize them, they probably forget things in their life. And so Mindy will be the first one to tell you, send me an email, because I don't know what you're talking about. I forgot. I know I said I would do it, but I forgot. And that's okay. We're all human. And so then you really have to take time. When you're a leader, you have to take time for yourself. And so that's where this personal category comes in. So like I said, I like to sleep. So for me, I just put on Thursday, I'm going to go to bed by 11 because I work at 8 a.m. on Friday. And then I'm going to nap on Friday because I'm probably still going to be tired even though I went to bed early. And so kind of just looking through your schedule and putting the places that you have specific events in there or specific responsibilities, and then working your life around that. So you'll see for relationships and friendship, I work from 2 to 5 on Wednesday, and I work with my friend Max. So at 5 on Wednesday, me and Max are going to go to dinner so we can hang out, but also eat, because eating is important. And we were already at work together, so we're probably already like in the same car or whatever. We can just hop in the car and go get food. Obviously, COVID changes that a little bit. Wear your mask, all of that, you know. But so it's just kind of looking at all of those pieces and seeing where you can fit in puzzle pieces, because you do need to take time for yourself and your friends and have fun, but we still got to get everything done that we need done. All right. So another thing to look at when we are attempting to manage our time and be productive is how we react to new or stressful scenarios. So to explain this, I'm going to use an email example. So think of a time when you opened your email knowing you had a bunch that you needed to handle or respond to. How does that feel? It feels pretty stressful. I don't want to do it. It just really prevents us from getting productive, right? And so that's already a reaction, is that we're kind of stressed. So we get over the anxiety of being stressed and seeing all these emails we have to deal with. And then we get through we open the first email. It's just that we messed up the date on our event in My Engage. Rainer just wanted us to make sure that we had the date right. Perfect. I log into My Engage. I fix the date, submit it for approval. I'm good to go. I can delete that email. I did what I needed to do. Then we get to the next email. It's from your professor asking you where you and your partner are at in your group project that's due at the end of the semester. But you and your partner haven't even talked about the project yet. It's fine. It's only September. We're good. But then like, I'm going to get really stressed, right? My professor just asked me, hey, like, how are you guys doing on this? And I haven't even thought about it. I haven't even talked to that person about it. That's really stressful, right? And so the thing we have to realize is our professor does not need a response right away. What we need to do is reach out to the person in our group project to figure that out, right? And so instead of getting stressed about the email and having to respond to the email, it's helpful to take a moment and figure out, what do we need to do to respond to this email? Well, I need to reach out to the person. We need to plan a meeting. We need to talk about how we're going to break up the project and break it into these little steps that we need to do. And then once you have that meeting, you can respond to your professor, or once you set the meeting, you can say, hey, we're actually meeting tomorrow to talk about it. I'll get back to you. That's a great response. Your professor will be happy to know that you even read your email, you responded, and you did something proactive about the email. You're doing great. But if we spent all this time stressing about that email and having to respond to our professor, we're going to work ourselves up into a place where we don't even want to be productive anymore, because we're so stressed out that our professor is going to be upset with us for not getting back to them timely, right? But you have to realize that if you're doing productive steps towards what they're asking of you, then you're still managing your time and getting things done responsibly. And so that's where we have to let down our need to do things in order. Obviously, I said I like lists. I like order. That's my favorite. But if I open my email and I have an email that I know I need to do something for, but I don't want to do it right now, or I don't have time, I'm going to skip it. I'm going to go through the rest of my email underneath it. Because we don't need to do everything in a perfect order. We've just been raised that that's the easiest way to do things, even though it may not be, because our reaction is going to distract us from our productivity. And by not allowing our reaction to overtake our productivity, in scenarios such as this, we're actually going to maximize our time and get through our emails a lot quicker. So now that we have some tips and tricks for prioritizing our work in the best way for yourself, not for everyone, let's talk about why you're even in the position you're in doing the work that you're doing. So to do this, we're going to imagine that we're doing a yearly review of your position. So if you're asking me, Michaela, what is a yearly review? Let me tell you, a lot of professional jobs will ask you every year to either your supervisor will sit down and think through your past year as an employee and how well you did, what you did good, what you need to change, what things could have went a little better, those kind of things. Some places do it where, so if Mindy was my supervisor, Mindy would do that, and then I would also do it for myself. So I would say, okay, Michaela, I did these good things and I need to work on these things. And this is like some steps I can work on to do better. And then we would come together and have a meeting about it. So if we were doing a yearly review of the position that you're in right now, it probably wouldn't be of yourself in it, since you're probably newly elected to the office or semi-new, especially with COVID. Even if you came into your position in January, it's kind of like, this is the beginning again. I don't know. We're all just figuring it out. And so for the purpose of this exercise on the next slide, we're going to act as if we were the supervisor over the previous person in our position. This is where the not sharing comes into good use. And because we're not going to be sending these reviews to anyone, we're not going to hurt anyone's feelings. We're just thinking about, from our perspective, on our own accord, brainstorming, what could have went better from this position for the betterment of our organization. So I want you to take a minute or two to make a list of things you think of when attempting to do a yearly review of your position. So remember, we're just dreaming. In a perfect world, this is what would have gotten done. Don't let any salty feelings from the past year get in your way. We're just going to attempt to come up with constructive criticism that will help better our organization. So this could be forgotten goals. So say at the beginning of last year, you guys said, okay, we're going to do this, and that never happened or never got revisited. Write it down. If it's a goal you cared about, that's something you can work on. Better communication, collaborating with other organizations, better use of my engage. I think we all can put that down as something we need to get better at. So just take a minute or two to try and think of what are those things that you would change or could be better about what happened in the past year. In response to the PowerPoint question, I can send out my PowerPoint if you guys all want. I can ask Rainer specifically who was in our session when he figures out all the attendance stuff, or if you want to put your email in the chat, Mindy can write it down and I can just send it on to you. Alrighty, I hope you all had some time to brainstorm those ideas that you think would help. We're going to have a few minutes in a little bit to make some goals for yourself in your position. So if it's sparking some thought, we're getting there, I promise. And so now that you've brainstormed what could have gone better with the last person, I want us all to take a moment to think about a time in our life where we've been so stressed out that all we could think about was, I just have to get through this one thing and then I'll be good to go. It's happened to all of us, I'm sure. That's okay. But it is important for us to acknowledge that the things that may have gotten forgotten in the past years of our organization may have been the result of the person that was in charge of that just being at the point where they were so overwhelmed with other things in their life that they were like, I just have to play, I just have to get through this event and then I'm good to go. And so even though the event happened, it may not have happened in all the ways you thought it would, or as many things might have not gone right as you wish would have with the event, but that's okay. We all have our moments. And so before we make goals while thinking about what hasn't gotten done in the past, it's important to remember that we all have lives and something is bound to come up and may prevent us from accomplishing everything we want to. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And so we need to make goals for what we're going to accomplish. But we also need to acknowledge that, because I know some of us, if we make a list of things we want to accomplish and we don't do it, we're going to beat ourselves up about it. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to make a hopeful list. If I can just get these 3 things done while I'm in this position, I have done my job. And that's also helpful because it doesn't need to be large things. It can be very simple things. I'll show you what my example is in a minute. And so now that we're thinking about, we all have lives that could come up and stress us out, but all these things that we wish would have gotten done from our perspective. Now, I want you to take 2 to 3 minutes. We're going to just think about 3 to 5 items. If you're halfway through your term, I would encourage you to only do 3 items. That's asking a lot for you doing COVID class and running an organization. To do 5 things, that's a lot. So just think of 3 to 5 things that you want to accomplish during your term. And kind of start thinking about what you would do to accomplish those things. But mainly just, what are 3 things that by the end of your term, you want to be able to say, I did that. And that means that I did what I wanted to do in my position. If I was tech savvy, I would have like fun, like little wait music while you guys were thinking. I'm sorry, I'm not tech savvy, so I didn't even want to like mess it up and try. So if you're playing your own thinking music, that's cool. Proud of you. All right, you got one more minute. Alrighty, so now that we have goals, or let's maybe call it a purpose for your term, if you will, we have to break those down into doable steps. Because thinking about your goals, some of you might have put a really small goal that's really easy to accomplish. That's cool. That's great. Small goals are very important as well. But some of you might have put a very large task on there that has a lot of little tasks that go behind it. And so that's where we have to create doable things that we can accomplish to ensure that we are getting to that larger goal. And so just a little simple example. So if I was thinking through organizations I've been in, better communication would have definitely been a huge thing. And so in order to improve our communication, how about during our first meeting, we make sure everyone has downloaded GroupMe, and to make sure that everyone has GroupMe going and rocking and making sure it's working well, we have to make sure that they turned on their notifications. We have to make sure that if there's someone that's not in attendance at the meeting, we add them to the GroupMe and kind of text them on the side like, hey, just so you know, we added you to the GroupMe. Go change your little name, add some emojis if you want, whatever. And then another part of communication is ensuring that everyone in leadership roles knows what's going on and receives important communication. So one way to accomplish that would be to CC the president on any emails sent regarding the RSO. So when I was Panhellenic president, the girl in charge of service on Panhellenic planned an entire cornhole tournament with IFC, Interfraternity Council, that I knew none of the details about. The only details I knew were that the boys on IFC were making it very difficult to turn in a food order and that the t-shirts were not coming out the way that they wanted them. Is that productive information for me as the president to know when the director of the Office of Student Involvement is asking me, hey, Michaela, what's going on with this cornhole tournament? I've had a lot of questions and I've heard a lot of complaints about the communication going on with it. If all I know is t-shirts aren't going well and the boys are being annoying about food, I don't really know a lot about the event. And so making sure that if you're not the president of your organization, maybe talking to the president to see, I mean, some people don't want a lot of emails, so they would rather not be in the loop. But if you're the president, I would say it's better to be in the loop and be annoyed by your amount of emails, because if it's an email that's not important to you, you just have to know what's going on. Here's the thing. You skim it, you figure out what you need to know, and you click delete. And then it's no longer your problem because you're not in charge of it. You're just overseeing that person in their position and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be, and you're also informed on what they're doing and how they're accomplishing that. And another way is that during either your all group meeting or maybe just if you have like a little exec meeting of your leadership board, going over what each person is working on, who they're in contact with about what they're planning, stuff like that. So that if someone comes to another person on the board and they're like, oh, hey, I know that you're in Panhellenic. Do you know what's going on with this cornhole tournament? They have some sort of idea of what's going on with the cornhole tournament, and they're not just like, I don't know, there's some drama with the t-shirts. Because then all I'm saying is that my organization has drama. I'm not communicating anything else to people asking me questions, right? And so the more we know about what's going on in our organization, the better we can represent our organization by providing quality and correct information. All right. Another thing that we love to tell ourselves, this is kind of, we have to reclaim our time, right? So we love to say, I don't have time for that. We have to figure out how to reclaim our free time specifically. So first off, that phrase, I don't have time. We love this phrase. We all love to use it. We use it often, but take a moment and think about who you say this to the most. What do you say it about? Like when people ask you to do something, is there a certain thing in your life that when people ask you to do it, you say, I don't have time for it? So the next thing to realize is that it's probably not necessarily that you don't have time. It's probably that you don't specifically care about that thing, right? And so we all are busy. There is a time constraint to our lives. There's only 168 hours in a week. I think that's the right number. But there is a place and time where we probably could fit something in if we really cared about it, right? And so when you say, I don't have time, so let's say that one of your members is like, hey, Katie said that I need to turn this art request in by this date, but I really have a large project to do. Is there any way you could help me out and turn in the art request for me? And if you say, I don't have time, but then you go out to have pizza with your friends, and that member of your organization sees on your Snapchat story that you're hanging out with friends, but you didn't have time, they're probably going to feel some type of way about that, right? And while you may have had these plans for a lot of time, that's okay that you have plans. But instead of saying, I don't have time, maybe saying, hey, I've had a dinner planned with my friends and I really want to go to it, but if you wanted to meet tomorrow morning, I could maybe help you walk through the art request and make it easier. Or is there any way we could wait until noon tomorrow to turn in the art request because I can do it when I wake up in the morning? Just kind of explaining instead of just saying, oh, I don't have time. That kind of just brushes them off because they can't say you have time for it because they don't know your schedule. So I don't have time is a very easy excuse to use when you don't want someone to like push you further on the topic, right? And so another thing when you're thinking about, oh, I don't have time, did you account for a flat tire in your schedule? Probably not. But when you get a flat tire, even if you have a perfectly planned out schedule and you have every single hour of your day accounted for, even the busiest person will find time to handle a flat tire or a broken down vehicle. How so? Well, it's because we have to. But sometimes all it takes to fit something into our schedule is to look at when we do have free time. Do we have a break between classes where you talk to your friends or scroll through social media? Maybe on your busy weeks, instead of doing that, you use that time to finish creating your event on My Engage. Or you post something on your organization's Instagram, even if it's just like a little poll, like what's your favorite candy, random thing, just engaging your followers, getting your name out there. What time are you getting done with classes? Do you leave campus around rush hour? If so, think about all that time you're spending in traffic. Could you maybe just stay on campus for an extra hour, spend that hour only working on whatever you need to for your RSO? And then when you leave campus, you'll get home a lot faster because there's not backup traffic on 70. And you already are done. So when you get home, you can eat dinner. You can go to bed if you want to. You can play with your dog if you want to. You can play with your niece if you want to. You already did your productive hour of the day. So you have all this free time now that you would have gotten home. And then, like, I don't know about you guys, but if I get home and there's like 30 minutes before the time I'm about to eat, I'm like, oh, well, I can't be productive in those 30 minutes. So I move on to something else. Yeah. So just kind of thinking through, if I was forced to make time for this in my day, would I be able to? And so I have a couple more slides. Bear with me. I'm sorry if I go a little over. Another thing is to think about small moments they can hold great power. So when I'm talking about this, I'm thinking, there's been times in my life where I'm about to get in the shower or I'm driving somewhere to go get food or something. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. But if I don't write it down in that moment, I'm going to forget about it. I'm going to go get my food and I'm going to come home and I'm going to forget all about this little idea that I had in my head, right? Or some of it, like you might have a grand idea while you're about to get in the shower. You're like, oh my gosh, this is what we can put on our poster on our art request. Don't just get in the shower, grab your phone, type it down really quick. And when you get out of the shower, then you can put it somewhere important that's not just in a random note on your phone. And if you're driving, you can say, hey Siri, da 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 da. Sorry to everyone whose phone just went off because I said, hey Siri. But you can tell Siri, remind me at 3 p.m. to email Mindy about the Involvement Expo. Boom. At 3 p.m., my phone's going to say, email Mindy. What's happening? My computer just exited out of my PowerPoint. Where are we at? Okay. Anyways.
You're doing great, Michaela.
It was probably a notification that just popped up and made it go down. Anyways, so just kind of taking advantages of those little thought processes that we have and not diminishing them as just, oh, I'll remember that later, because we probably won't remember that later. And then we'll be like a week later and like, oh man, I forgot to do that thing and that I remembered when I was randomly driving to Dairy Queen. All right, and then lastly, you need to dedicate some of your free time to actually being free. To the extroverts in the room, sometimes you don't need to hang out with people. You can take a day and just be by yourself. And sometimes that's refreshing. Let me tell you, I'm an extrovert, but sometimes I come home and I'm like, I just need to lay in my bed and not talk to anyone for an hour. And that's okay. That's healing to you. So do that. You all are rock stars in your positions. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been put in your position. People believe in you. They have faith in you. So you need to know that you're a rock star and you deserve to have time to yourself. You need to take time for yourself to be healthy, whether that's making sure you get enough sleep, you get time with your friends, or even going to grab a coffee before you start your day. Remember how we were talking about lists? They take some time. Driving to Dunkin' Donuts to get a nice coffee, does it add 30 minutes to my day? Yes. But when I get home and I'm on that caffeine high, I am running through my emails and I am being productive. So if that's what it takes, is a 30-minute drive and a $2 coffee, do it. Whatever it takes to get you through the day, that's what it is. All right, so next, Mindy's gonna send the little attendance link in the chat for you all. All right, it's in there. And then, so go ahead and fill that out and so that we know who was here and all that good jazz for your organization's attendance, but also just for our knowledge. If one of you made a really cool message in the chat, then we can go back and look at who was in my session and we can message you about it later. And so thank you again. Wanted to be less professional, a little bit more human to you. Here's a random photo of me in my living room wearing an UMSL t-shirts. And as always, as all of these end, you can contact me. There's my student, or not my student email, but my work email that I check more frequently than I should. Shameless plug, if any of you are interested in students of service, hit me up because I'm in charge of them now. Does anyone have any questions that I need to address that were in the chat?
I think most of them are answered, but you did a great job, Michaela.
Thanks. If anyone has any questions that weren't in the chat or didn't get answered, feel free. I love the action of writing out my ideas has helped me remember them. I agree. I meant to say that, but I didn't. So thank you for adding that piece, this little tidbit to the presentation. We were on the same wavelength, Karen. Yeah. All right. Well, you all are free to go once you fill out your little attendance form. Thank you for joining me today. It was a lot of fun. You're welcome.